let's go ahead and bring Jimmy Hyams in here. We had a little bit of technical difficulty. Jimmy joins us now. Jimmy Hyams, nice enough to join us. Jimmy, how are you, sir?
Guys, I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. I know we had some technical issues. My apologies on that. Let me get your thoughts on Georgia Tech being the new home and home opponent that will replace Nebraska.
I like it. I think that's a good opponent for Tennessee. It used to be a pretty good rivalry game. One of the all-time great games in Tennessee history was that Georgia Tech game back in 1956 when John Majors was playing for the Vols, and I think it was like 6-0. But it goes down as one of the greatest games that Tennessee has played. I think that was a matchup of 1 versus 2. I do remember some games in the 1980s. Guys, the year that Tennessee in 1985 ended up winning the Sugar Bowl, the week after the Tony Robinson injury against Alabama, they tied Georgia Tech 6-6. Georgia Tech has been a bit of a nemesis at times for Tennessee, but it's an ACC opponent. It's a competent team. Guys that were not only good enough to beat Miami last year, but they took Georgia to the wire, 44-42. So this is a team that in a given year can be pretty darn good. They won a national championship and they shared it. Was it 1990 maybe? Mm-hmm. I could be 1 year off.
Yeah, 90 with Colorado.
So I think it's a really good matchup, and frankly, I think it's every bit as appealing as it would be if you played Nebraska.
I do too. Go ahead, Caleb.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy, I was just saying before you came on the show, funny enough, it's interesting. It's like, you're right. I brought up the 56 game. Also in 51, Tennessee actually shared the SEC title with Georgia Tech, even though they won it all because both teams went undefeated in SEC play. Mm-hmm. Georgia Tech's most legendary coach was a Bob Nealon protege and Bobby Dodd.
Yeah.
But so I want to know where you come on this because I said there's 2 generations of Tennessee people who follow Tennessee. Baby boomers and earlier Gen Xers will remember the rivalries, like you said, and the matchups that they had. But anybody younger, the only thing they remember from Georgia Tech is the turnover trash can in 2017. So which one stands out to you more?
Oh, yeah. Well, the turnover trash can. How about that? That was also a game that I remember that, it was a very tight game. Georgia Tech was running this triple option, right, with Paul Johnson. And Tennessee didn't like it because they did a lot of chop blocking. And they were worried about players getting hurt. And they actually, I thought, had a ridiculous scheme. They just played off the line of scrimmage and said, Georgia Tech, if you want to run for 5 yards up the middle, go ahead. And so they did. And that wasn't one reason Tennessee almost got upset. It also, I think, is one of the reasons Tennessee canceled the Army game. They didn't want to go against the triple option where people were chop blocking the defensive line. And so Tennessee backed out of that one. But, I do remember that Georgia Tech game very well. And Georgia Tech, I thought, actually outplayed Tennessee. I thought Tennessee was fortunate to win that game.
You're understating it. That's the luckiest win Tennessee ever had. They had no business winning that game.
Go ahead and click that thumbs up button, the like button. If you haven't subscribed at this point, we greatly appreciate it. We appreciate Jimmy Hyams for taking the time to join us. It is a Georgia Tech team that obviously is based in Atlanta. We used to say back in the day that gave you exposure in recruiting. I'm not sure with social media and the fact that we all have a phone that we're attached to everybody. I'm not sure that's as big of a factor as it used to be, Jimmy.
No, I agree with you. And I do think, obviously, you do want to recruit Georgia. You do want to recruit the Atlanta area. There are a ton of prospects. If you look at the history of Tennessee, some of Tennessee's greatest teams, and I'll even mention the 1998 National Championship team, many of their star players came from Georgia. So when Tennessee's been at its best, they have hit the fertile recruiting grounds of Georgia and done very well. So, but I do think with the national recruiting and the way it goes right now, I don't know that playing in Atlanta is a huge deal in recruiting. Certainly wouldn't hurt. But I do think that the Atlanta area and the state of Georgia are very important to Tennessee in football recruiting.
Jimmy, I want to ask you just on the principle. I know the SEC requires teams to play like one Power 5 non-conference game as of right now. But we also all saw with our own eyes what the College Football Playoff Committee did last year, where they just chucked schedule strength out the window and did not care. Mm-hmm. And I understand that we don't know what's going to hold for the College Football Playoff after 2025. But given that Georgia Tech's a solid program under Brent Key and is kind of a program on the rise a little bit, do you think it's really worth it for a school like Tennessee to schedule these type of games where, you know, if they get caught napping, they could slip up, and as opposed to they won't get the reward for winning a decent game like that?
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is, shouldn't you reward your fans by playing some decent non-conference games? So I would go in that direction. And by the way, if you can't beat Georgia Tech, you probably don't deserve to be in the college football playoff anyway. Now, I agree with you that the college football selection committee didn't really care much about strength of schedule. They cared about the one-loss record. I also, and correct me if I'm wrong, how many are there? 3 or 6 new committee members this year? I'm trying to remember.
I think there's 5.
5.
There was supposed to be 3, and then 2 others like stepped down or got replaced or something like that. So
okay, so maybe those 5 new members look at strength of schedule and decide, hey, that is important. You guys were wrong. So it's a moving target. It's almost like a jury. You get a jury in Atlanta and a jury in Birmingham, and they may have a different decision on a verdict. So I think if you bring in new faces, they may look at what what I'm saying is, you can't really say there's a precedent, because you got new bodies, new minds, new people on the committee who might look and value strength of schedule more so than the previous committee.
Jimmy, what's your take on Danny White's response? Because this was pretty quick. What, about a month, I guess, since the Nebraska pool happened. Yeah. And he's able to get an opponent that has a little bit of history and a significant opponent in a recruiting area. We downplayed that a little bit, but this is a solid opponent when you're caught shorthanded.
No, I think it's really good. I think they did a very good job. Now, I will say this. I wasn't real thrilled with Danny White being as critical of Nebraska backing out, because Tennessee's history is Tennessee's backed out of their share of games through the years. So I wasn't a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of adding Georgia Tech. I think that's huge. And I think it's a known opponent. It's an opponent that is a quality opponent. It's an opponent that I think fans are interested to watch play, much more so than, let's say, Kennesaw State, right? So I think you do need to give your fans at least one, if not 2, appealing non-conference games, and this is one of them.
Jimmy, what also stands out to me about this is that it's a home and home and not a neutral site. Mm-hmm. I always wondered, why shouldn't home and homes be the way to go? Because don't you get more money with the home and homes than you do having to do a neutral site, where you both split the revenue and you got to pay a promoter for a neutral site game half the times, don't you?
Well, I think it varies from what I'm told. So Tennessee would make a lot of money by having Georgia Tech in Knoxville, but not make so much money by going to Georgia Tech. I think I'm right about this, but I remember when Tennessee played Virginia in Nashville, Tennessee was guaranteed almost $4 million. They were guaranteed a pretty hefty amount. I don't know what Virginia's guarantee was. So I do think that in neutral site games, that financially, if you just play it one time, you come out almost as well as playing a home game. So I don't know if there's a huge financial incentive to play home and home versus neutral site.
Jimmy, if I'd have just thrown this out to you, and obviously we don't know the holes that are available in each schedule, but who would have been some opponents that, if you're Danny White, you would have reached out for?
Well, Georgia Tech's one of them. North Carolina would be another one. Heck, I always liked the idea of playing Notre Dame. I think that's been a great series for Tennessee through the years. So I do like that idea. Those are the ones that come to mind immediately. You have recently played West Virginia. You got them playing. You playing them again. I'll tell you another one that I would like to see is Virginia Tech. That would be another opponent. As I try to go west of the Mason-Dixon, gosh, I don't know. They're not many that are too appealing to me that I think are. If you could get USC back on the schedule, or UCLA on the schedule, I think that would be appealing as well. How about Colorado? Hey,
I'm up for that.
Sanders. Yeah, if you're playing a Deion Sanders team, you're going to get a lot of attention.
Yeah, call it the Boo Bowl, since he flirted a lot with Colorado. Virginia Tech's fine. Just don't do it at a dad blame racetrack.
Yeah, where you need binoculars. Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah. Well, I know that wasn't Butch, but it happened under him. We were just talking about the worst gimmicks that happened under Butch Jones. That might have been the worst one, to do that. Yeah. Jimmy, just funny enough, we talk about it, and, I think you're a college football history buff like I am. And, you wonder if Georgia Tech had not left the SEC, thinking about them as an opener and them as a potential like permanent rivalry of Tennessee, would they be at the level that Georgia is at in football today instead of Georgia, do you think?
Well, that's a great question. I think they would overall have been better. Do I think Georgia would have still gotten the cream of the crop in the state of Georgia? I do. But I think Georgia Tech would have been better, more consistently at a higher level. I think they would have done a better job in recruiting within their own state, as opposed to Georgia racking up like Georgia has done through the years. So, yeah, I think Georgia Tech would have been better. At the level of Georgia, I would say probably not, but right below them. I'm almost like, well, I don't know if this is that good of a comparison. Almost, but not quite, like Alabama versus Auburn. Okay. Auburn's still really good, and they've had a national championship, but Alabama's a little bit better, right? So
right. I know that this doesn't affect anybody now, but back in the day, Georgia Tech did have higher academic standards, so it was tougher to get guys in. Nowadays, I don't even know if anybody's going to class, Jimmy.
Well, if you're a transfer portal guy, there's no way all those guys are eligible. They're not paying attention to academics. They don't care about academics. They care about how many games they can win and what star player they can come in and hire as a mercenary.
Yep, agreed.